Ladies and gentlemen, episode 4 of In the
Number
Bag. Brad, how are you
How's
doing
it
today?
going? Good, man. Despite this crazy weather, you'll hear a little bit more about that in the disc suggestion section. But yeah, it's been cold and rainy right after, a couple 90, 100-degree days. So, staying inside, keeping the shop busy, doing some stuff in the warehouse. But other than that, great, man. How about you?
It's been great. We're moving into a rainy week here as well, and I am one of those people that I don't mind when I play tournaments in the rain, but I would prefer not to. Yet a lot of people aren't prepared to play tournaments in the rain, so I'm kind of like wishy-washy. We have a tournament this weekend. Kind of wishy-washy on whether I want it to be rainy so that I have an advantage or not be rainy because I don't want to be miserable the whole time, right?
Yeah, that's a tough one.
So, but speaking of not being miserable, what a transition. Let's bring in our guest today,
Yeah.
shall we? All right, we have with us for our fourth guest a 50% chance of our guest being named Ben. Ben, welcome.
Hi.
How's it going, Ben?
How's it going?
Hey, we're living the dream over here. How are you doing in your neck of the woods? It looks pretty sunny where you're at.
It's actually not. It's actually pouring down. It poured down rain here today. So in Richmond, I'm in Richmond, Virginia. And it poured
great.
down rain today. So it actually, it was super sunny this past weekend though. It was really nice. Played around at one of the new courses in Richmond. It's a course called True Timber. It's awesome. If you guys ever get a chance to come out to Richmond, highly recommend it. Beautiful course. I want to put it in a plug for them because the people who are making it are really wonderful human beings.
Awesome. So,
That's great. That's not too far from me at all. It's only about 2 hours. I'll actually be up there in a couple weekends, so I may come check it
Oh,
out.
fantastic. Yeah, definitely do it.
come on, come on. Well, Ben, we have some foundational questions for you, just to give
Okay.
our listeners sort of a gauge of where you're at so they can be tracking alongside with their game, even though obviously everyone's game's a little different. So we start off with a basic question. How far do you throw for golf distance? Not necessarily like one time downhill with a tailwind, I threw 700 feet. If that's you, awesome. But how far do you throw? What's your controlled golf distance?
Uh, just really quickly, so I make sure that I'm answering your question correctly. What do you mean by controlled distance? Like, you
So
mean just average, like if I'm going out, usual, typical off the tee?
yeah, off the tee, you step
Usually,
up and you're like, this hole is blank feet. You feel like I can comfortably get it there, but this is like the edge of that range.
right. Probably my average would probably be 250. If I really need to get out there, 270, 280. And if I'm having an outstanding day, I've had a couple of times when I've broke 300.
Okay.
But that's the absolute outer limit is breaking 300, which I've done a handful of times.
I love it. And most
So
of our listeners are going to connect with you on that. So,
yeah.
Brad, living in that world until we found last week's disc, right?
Right, yeah, a little different now. I think I unlocked something, but anyway, it's glad to hear, Ben. I think a lot of people can relate there.
Absolutely.
Okay.
So that's distance. And then we go to another part of the game, putting. If I set you up on the putting green and I gave you 10 putts from 15 feet, 10 putts from 25 feet, and 10 putts from 40 feet, how many of those are you making from each station?
I would say from 15 feet, probably half. From 25 feet, one or two, and from 40, it's probably not happening. That's probably a zero.
Okay.
I
If you
think
do hit a
that's
40,
that.
yeah, hit a
Yeah,
40
if I
footer,
hit a
you're
40
feeling
foot
great.
putt, yeah, I was feeling great. I'd be running up and down the course. I'd be obnoxious about it.
That's
All
awesome.
my friends would be like, "Whoa, dude."
Whoa. It's just
Yeah,
just a double bogey. It's fine. No.
it's okay. Yeah, exactly. You just
So,
saved double bogey, man. Calm
hey,
down.
all good, brother. All good. Okay,
Yeah.
cool. So, with that in mind, what would you say is the greatest strength of your game?
Um, I think what has kind of become my biggest strength is actually a piece of advice that I got from one of your videos, and that was not making things worse for myself by trying to do something I can't do.
Hmm.
I've started to kind of recognize, sometimes the best thing that I can do is just lay up or just, hey, I'm in the woods, just toss back out on the fairway. don't try to be a hero and find like some super secret ninja line. I can do this. I can make this happen. I think the biggest strength that I've obtained over the past few weeks is just figuring out how to get myself out of a bad situation. And instead of spending all my time working on trying to get some crazy mad distance, I've started really working hard on utility shots. So like thumbers, tomahawks, grenades, things like just stuff that can get you out of a bad situation when you're in one, and recognizing like, I don't have to, every shot doesn't have to park it right underneath the basket.
Yeah,
I think that's my biggest strength right now.
I mean, that first off, the scramble game is something that people at the top, why I think that people underestimate how good the top pros are. Everyone looks at their distance and they're like, oh yeah, they throw so far. Obviously they're good. What always blows my mind, and especially the one, like the pro tour that I played, I felt like when players got in bad positions, those players could scramble so well. And it was like, okay, yeah, no, they're definitely like, they're going to have to do something. And for them, it wasn't even like they were throwing a hero line. They were just so good at scrambling. So I love that you're working on that utility shot game. Brad, do you have like utility shots that you're developing in your game?
Yeah, so really, so I grew up my whole youth playing travel baseball as a catcher. So I rely on my thumber a lot. I feel like that's like a just stable like baseball throw for me. So that can definitely get me out of some trouble. Definitely some like touchy forehands, like laying on my stomach. You know what I mean, like stuff like that. But definitely getting to the point where I'm maybe needing them less, but they're becoming a little more precise, if that makes sense.
Yeah, so you don't have to practice them as often, but it's still, yeah, like they're getting better somehow. That's, man, that's so interesting. Like, a video idea is turning for me, y'all, of, okay, like, why should you practice your scramble game? And it's like the catch-22 of, I shouldn't have to practice it because I don't have to scramble. Like, why would I plan on scrambling? And then it's like, but if you do, right? That's totally fair. Love it. We're going to dive straight into your bag, and especially talking about that controlled distance at 250. I want to dive into your distance drivers to start, Ben, and we're going to work our way top to bottom through the bag. So,
absolutely.
You have 5 discs that you listed as distance drivers, and it's actually very interesting. I don't know if it was like I've got questions about 2 of them compared to 2 of your one of your fairway drivers, but we'll get there in a second.
Yeah.
So
I think because the Roadrunner should have been in distance drivers.
Yes. Okay.
Yes.
Cool.
Yeah,
cool.
that was a mistake on my part. That's my error. That was not intentional.
I'll say I wasn't sure if it was like I consider
Yeah.
the Roadrunner a fairway. Okay, perfect. So we'll throw the Roadrunner in there. Love it. You got for our YouTube watchers, graphics on the screen showing the bag. We've got 5 discs or 6 drivers in the bag, 3 of them being 9 speeds, 3 of them being 11 or faster. So walk me through the Thrasher, the Shrike, and the Relativity. They're all very similar, it looks like, in what they do. Or better yet, before we really dive into that, tell us about, when you messaged me, you had mentioned how you got most of your discs.
Yes. Yeah.
Give us a quick overview of that.
So I'm a really new player. I just started playing in December. I have I actually have several friends who have been trying to get me to play for a long time, but a really good buddy of mine who's been playing forever and a day has been trying to get me into it. And one day in December, we had a day here where it was like 70 degrees outside. It was beautiful. And I said, yeah, heck with it. Let's do it. I love being outside, and there's a disc golf course 5 minutes from my house. Let's go. So me and him and another dude went, and I loved it. And I was like, God, I wish I had done this years ago. And so, we started playing, and about a week later, we went to another course, and I brought my son, who's 15, and he loved it. And so it became something that he and I now do together. So that was part of kind of why I got into it. And my wife, sensing, hey, this is good. This is a good activity. She went on Facebook Marketplace and she found somebody who was selling a bag and all the discs in it. And it was $80, and it was a bag and a whole bunch of discs. And so she got it for me. And so a number of these discs I inherited without having any idea what they did, or how they were going to perform. And I think I'm like everybody else when I first got in, and you're watching people out there playing who are able to throw like 600-700 feet, and you're just like, how is that possible? And so a couple of them are discs that I bought, or actually several of them now are discs that I bought because I actually lost a few of the ones that I originally got. But yeah, a lot of the discs in that bag are discs that I actually inherited. I got from my wife just buying this bag with a bunch of random discs in it.
Okay. Okay. So between the Relativity, the Shrike, and the Thrasher, were any of those inherited or were any of those purchased?
The Shrike was inherited.
Okay.
That came with the bag. The Relativity I got, and I got it because it was so understable. And that was the concept there. Was I was trying to get discs. What I found is that understable discs I tend to throw a lot better. They perform a lot better for me.
Yeah.
The Thrasher I just got a week ago actually, and it was a tournament disc.
Okay.
And so it was part of the player pack for a tournament that I played in, and so that's how I got that.
Okay. So your Relativity as compared to the Shrike, both are these like max distance discs for you, or are they kind of discs that have like some more utility shot for you?
Uh, no, actually, the Shrike is interesting because the Shrike is my favorite thumber or tomahawk disc. I love it for that because it
Interesting.
just cuts right through. It's so thin, it almost just cuts through whatever I need to get through. So that's a disc that I really like having for that. Whenever I try to throw like a backhand with it, I mean, you're talking 100 feet or 150 feet, I guess, max, and then it's a sharp, just a sharp fade. Um, the Relativity I can actually get really decent distance out of, but I have to throw using a form that is really not ideal.
Okay.
I almost do like a reverse forehand for that, and I've been told like don't do that, it's gonna really mess up your arm. But I'll kind of cock up like this and then come out like that. And when I do it that way, I can actually get pretty decent distance. But I've had people tell me if you do that, you're gonna jack up your elbow and your shoulder, and like you're gonna hate life later if you keep doing that. So I don't do that anymore.
That's that's totally fair. Just watching
Yeah.
you even sort of show that
Yeah.
made my shoulder hurt a little bit.
Right. Yeah.
So Brad, I don't throw a lot of thumbers. Have you do you thumber any of your distance drivers?
Um, Really, my go-to thumber disc, I have this really beat-in Raptor that I love to thumber. I also a thumber like a Captain's Raptor if I want something pretty stable.
Okay. Yeah.
But I don't really thumber any of my distance drivers, to be honest with you.
Okay. Awesome. Well, okay. So I love that's where we're in the distance driver category. You've got two Valkyries and a Roadrunner. Are these your furthest flying backhand discs?
The Valkyrie and the DX plastic is generally speaking my best distance driver.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that's the one that's going about the 250 mark that we talked about
Yeah,
earlier?
that I've gotten. Yeah, I've gotten that one. I've cranked that one over 280. I've actually gotten the Thrasher over 300. The Thrasher has become my new favorite, but it's still new. So
Yeah.
I'll be interested to see what happens with that when it gets beat in.
Yeah.
Um,
It's worth noting there's a world when new discs enter your bag. It's almost like a recency bias type feel where
right.
when it comes in, you're like your body gets more excited to throw it, so you
Uh-huh.
just throw it farther. It's a very real thing. Like that's how I feel
Huh.
with every
That's interesting.
time that I put turns back in my bag. I'm always
Hmm.
like, yeah, like I don't need a turn in my bag. And then usually it'll be the week of a tournament. I'll put one back in the bag and be like, oh my gosh, what? Where has this thing been? Oh, it's
Yeah.
so good. I filmed a video today and had that issue. So
No, it's funny. I got that disc for the tournament, and in the second round I started throwing it, and I was like, where has this disc been all my life? It's so wonderful.
I hear
So
that.
yeah.
Okay. Well, so
Yeah.
my first piece of advice for the drivers is, especially at 250, you're kind of feeling it, and it's somewhat of a predictable advice. I would say that until we start seeing some other increases in distance, you're having to hit those discs so hard that I'm sure even when you're getting that Thrasher over that 300-foot mark, the control feels like it might leave the window a little bit because you have to hit it with such gusto. And even you talk about that relativity, I think that we can get so focused on the understable side of things that we
Right,
forget about that 14 speed is going to hit a lot harder than that -3 turn.
Right.
So, and that's fair. I'm not, and I'm also, I don't, like I said, throw thumbers. So, and thumbers and tomahawks. So if the Shrike is working for you and that's a shot that you do often, it's hard for me to be like, yeah, don't do that. Like, so I say lean into it. I like that you have found a disc that works for that, and fantastic. I want to take a step down to you have some leopards in your bag in the fairway driver slot. So you have a Halo Leopard 3, one of the own Scoggins, I'm guessing.
Yes.
And then you have a leopard and a DX leopard, it looks like.
Yes. Yeah.
Inherited
Yeah,
disc.
Yeah, that one was inherited. The Leopard 3, I'll be honest, is a disc that I bought purely because of what it looked like. I'm not even gonna pretend that it's any, because it's a beautiful disc, and I was kind of like, this is super cool looking. It has a pretty hard fade. I like the Leopard and the DX plastic. It, for whatever reason, it doesn't. I always feel like I have other discs that end up doing better than that, and so I don't often throw it. It's one of those discs that stays in my bag, and I almost never pull it out.
Okay. Well, Brad, I'm gonna let you say it.
If it's not good, take it out of the bag, Ben.
Okay.
You got to lean into it, because here's why this is a motto of our show, is that if you have a disc that you're like, hey, this is like, I have this in here because of emergency or because of this,
Right.
like, that's not good headspace for us to have for it. And also, if you already are that, if we're not even on the course right now and you're thinking like there are other discs that do this better, imagine if you find yourself in a scenario where you're like, oh no, I gotta throw this DX Leopard.
Yeah.
Like that's not good. So
Yeah,
you want to
no, I
have,
gotcha.
if we have another disc that we can find that holds that same flight pattern that you have more confidence in, all of a sudden before we've even put ourselves in a bad situation, we have confidence, which is only going to make us play better. Which is why I have a question about the relay that you have there. The relay gyro disc, for those unfamiliar, very similar in flight to the Leopard. So you mentioned you have a disc that you feel like does it better. What's the difference between that relay and your DX Leopard?
So the relay actually was the disc I got from joining the PDGA, which was so that just kind of, I didn't even know I was going to get a disc for joining the PDGA. I joined so that I could do the Tour to Richmond, which was the tournament we had a couple of weeks ago. And so, I joined for that, and then in the mail I get, a disc and a little mini and stuff like that. And so I actually had to, it took me a while to even figure out what it is. It's actually a really pretty disc. It's got the little sea turtle on it and all that, which I'm a big scuba diver, so I loved it, but I didn't even know what it was. I had to Google around to find out, like, what even is this disc? Like,
Yeah.
it wasn't something that I went and picked out. So it's in my bag for that reason. I have found, actually, and I don't know why this is, that for whatever reason, the relay plays more understable. And so I do tend to pull that out and throw it. Even though the flight numbers are the same, I I think they're identical actually, right? To the relay and the
To the
leopard.
leopard. Hmm.
Yeah, it's really strange. The leopard, the fade is much more noticeable. It plays like it has a higher fade, and the relay plays like it's more understable. I don't really know
Yeah.
why. It could be some unique feature of my arm or
Yeah.
something weird about the two individual discs I got. I don't know.
When you're talking about this, are you comparing this to the DX leopard? It has more fade, or to that
The
leopard
DX,
3?
yeah, no, the
Okay.
Leopard 3 actually flies very different than the Leopard. Those are two
Understandably.
very different discs.
Yes,
So,
understandably, and the halo plastic has a lot to do with that as well.
yeah.
So yeah, that's very interesting, and it goes to show you that flight numbers aren't always reliable. So you kind of got to lean into it, and you kind of got to throw it if you really want to learn. Brad, have you had any discs that you've come across so far that you were like, looking at the flight numbers, this disc and this disc should fly very similar, but
I don't know about like comparing two. If I'm being 100% honest, over the last several months, like flight numbers have been like way more important to me than they ever have. At first, I was just trying to figure out how they flew, just by visually how they flew. But the one disc that really disappointed me was the Mantis. I really wanted to throw Mantis based on the flight numbers. I'm like, that's the fairway disc I've been waiting for, and did not fly any. It was a big Z with like this cool small Mantis stamp on it, and did not fly any. And I kept it in my bag for 6 months. I had two of them, and they just sat there, and I didn't throw them one time. So that was probably the closest for me, Robbie.
yeah. So did you think the Mantis was going to be almost like easy flip city, but still like not burn over for you?
Yep, yep, yep. And it was not flippy at all.
Yeah. Okay. So, and it goes to show you one thing that I like about the gyro discs, Ben, is that I think that they do kind of try to follow that. There's a lot of consistency between the different molds, or between the different runs, I should say, is a better way to put it.
Yeah.
I know one of Brad's new favorite discs that we found on the show is the Uplink, and that's going to be our
Oh, I
transition
love that up. I love that disc.
yeah. So you also have
That's
an
a
Uplink in
great
your
disc.
bag.
I do.
It's fantastic. And I'm just telling you, listeners, first off, thank you, everyone who tunes in and follows. Make sure you give us a like and subscribe and a rating on the podcasts, on the audio stuff. It helps a lot. But when I recommended the Uplink in episode 2, I did not forecast, and we did not have these guests lined up, that the Uplink was going to keep showing up. I promise. So
Yeah.
it's just
Not planned.
it's working out. But you have, so I like that consistency between them. And like you mentioned, that the understability works really well for you. So
Yeah.
I think you're leaning into that. And a really cool feature of your fairways is that you have the Leopard 3, which is technically supposed to be an understable disc, but it doesn't fly like that for you,
No, not
which
at
is
all.
which is fine. And it's going to fill some of that overstable slot, and your Valkyrie can kind of step in that overstable slot. So we've got options covered there. You have the Uplink and the Paradox. Do you lean on those often, or are you leaning on this army of buzzes that you have?
So the uplink is, and here's, so I got the uplink and I got the paradox for the same reason. I was trying to learn how to throw a hyzer flip. That was my goal. I was trying to learn how to throw a hyzer flip. I can successfully hyzer flip an uplink. I cannot, for the life of me, figure out how to do it with it's almost like the paradox is too understable. And so I keep the paradox in my bag for when I need to throw an Anhyzer backhand, because my forehand game is awful. There's no good way to describe it other than atrocious. Which is funny because my son walked out on a disc golf course his very first day and was throwing forehands like he'd been doing it his whole life. It really made me. It was such a jealous thing. Yeah, it was amazing, but I cannot throw a forehand to save my life. So the paradox actually fills the role of when I need to throw an Anhyzer shot, a shot that's gonna curve to the right. That's my go-to disc for that. The uplink has become my favorite disc for when I have a tunnel shot. When I have a narrow gap. The course that I mentioned at the very beginning, True Timber has an island hole on it. and you have to hit the island. And unfortunately, there's like this narrow gap of trees, and you have to find a way around it and find a way to get your disc to land on that island. And the only way I've ever been able to successfully hit it, and it's really hard to do, but I can hit it about 50% of the time with that uplink.
Okay.
And so that's become my disc for anytime I have a sort of a narrow gap and I need a disc to just fly straight down it. That's my go-to there.
Okay. Awesome. Awesome. And then we have 3 buzzes in the bag, which
Yeah.
the Discraft fan that we have here as my wonderful co-host, we've not seen people have buzzes in their bag yet. So talk us through. You have 3 buzzes. Why do you have 3 buzzes in your bag?
So I one of the when I first got the bag, I inherited a buzz and loved it. It was very quickly the one disc that I actually felt like I could sort of kind of play with.
Mm.
And so I ended up getting another one, which is fortunate because the original one that came in the bag went in the water. Um, and yeah, I have lost so many. I'm really upset actually because I have the Halloween buzz, or I had the Halloween buzz, and it's in the woods somewhere on on one of the local courses here. And um I have 2 in the bag that I bought, and one of them was another tournament package, player pack disc. That
Okay.
was actually the first tournament I played in. Was I got that disc from? They had all these discs out there, and they were like, here, you can get a nuke, you can get a this, you can get a that, and I was kind of like, I know what the buzz does. I'm gonna
Okay.
take that, so that's
Okay.
why I have 3.
So you have 3, but they don't really serve different roles for you necessarily. It's more of a lot of carrying backups with you. Am I getting that vibe?
No, I would say that there's one that I would probably take out, and that's the green one in the Z plastic. I don't usually throw that one, but the ESP one
Mhm.
is probably my workhorse disc. It's the disc that I throw most commonly from the team.
Yeah. Okay.
If I'm that is my sort of go-to driver. Especially if I'm on a hole and I don't know the course, if I'm on a course for the first time, that's my almost constant go-to disc. I always feel really good about it. Um, the other one, the one that I got out of the player pack actually has become my true sort of mid-range.
Okay. Awesome.
That's become that disc for me.
Yeah. Okay. Interesting. Okay.
Yeah, so I
I
could probably go without one of them.
Yeah, no, that's
But
totally
yeah.
fair. And as long as there's a difference between them, you're
Hmm.
going to see that some are going to beat in. And the beauty of a buzz is that eventually the buzz will beat in to be a lot more understable. So it'll probably fly closer to that uplink. Brad, have you been playing long enough that you've seen one of your buzzes? Do you bag buzzes?
Yeah, I have 2. I have one in Z plastic. It was the first disc I ever bought, and I still have it somehow. It is the disc you're describing, Robbie. It will literally flip up for me. It'll do whatever I tell it to do. Me and that disc have a bond that I can't explain. And then I've switched several in and out. Like I had a big Z in there for a while. It was a little more stable than that one, obviously. Right now I have a titanium buzz in there that it tends to be a little bit more stable. If I need to hit it a little harder, but I still need that buzz flight, then I'll go to that disc.
Okay, awesome. Well, yeah, I wanna confirm you in that and saying it sounds like you've got 4 different shots covered with your um, between your mid ranges, and so I think that's fantastic. The entropy, we're going to move into putters, and that's where we want to kind of close
Okay.
our time
Yeah.
and have ask the most questions because that's where our experiment is today. The
Roger
entropy
that.
flies a lot more like a mid range than a putter for most people. It's
I
in
would
the
agree.
4-speed category,
Hmm.
but it's in that like zone-ish putt and approach world, right?
Hmm.
Where it's a I guess now the pig, my precious child, falls into that category as well because Innova changed the flight numbers on it because it was a Tuesday. So why not change the flight numbers on it? We're not so sore about it at all. So the entropy flies like a mid-range. So that's where I actually wouldn't even recommend on the mid-range side of things having that overstable option because I think the entropy can fill that for you. When we go down to your other putting putters in your bag, you've got the Roach, a Judge, and an AVR all kind of on top of each other. And we had talked off air about you bought a 5-pack of Judges to start practicing your putting with your son.
Right, yeah.
And here we go. Fantastic. I love that because for a while you were putting with a Star AVR.
Yes. Yeah, that was
Okay.
sort of my my putting putter.
And you inherited the Star AVR?
No, I bought that. I inherited a regular just a white AVR and a DX plastic. And interestingly enough, my when I started going around to different shops and stuff and looking at discs, my daughter, who's a very gifted artist, very quickly picked up on a lot of people like to dye discs, and so she took that. And I gave it to her, but she took that to experiment with dyeing. And so that's back in the mad science lab that is my daughter's bedroom.
Okay.
Yeah, I used to have a DX AVR. And so I got the Star AVR purely because in my mind it was gonna last longer. Was
Okay.
the main reason, and I had never really tried to throw it, and then one day I was kind of fooling around, and I was like, wow, I get some crazy distance with this AVR, like wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was like, holy smokes, I'd start driving with this AVR, like good lord.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. I encourage people to play putter only rounds for a reason, and
Hmm.
there's no way you lose when you play a putter only round. No way you lose. So you also have a Roach in your bag, and you
Yeah,
mentioned that your Roach is for like in case of emergency, break glass, like the disc
yeah.
has gone, like one of your other putters is gone, and you have a backup putter.
Yeah, and that was a disc that actually came with the bag. That was one that I inherited.
Okay,
And so
awesome.
like yeah, that's my if I end up losing a putter somehow, it hits and rolls into the gray ether that all of our discs go into.
Yeah,
I have a backup.
yeah.
That's its purpose in my bag.
So the first little change that I want to make in that is you have this 5-pack of Judges now.
Right.
So if I were you, what I would do is I would take the Roach out and I would move the Roach into the practice regiment because if we only have 5 putters to work with anyways, we
Right.
getting reps isn't necessarily like obviously in an ideal practice world you'd have the same disc in a whole stack and you could just jam them out with that, but that takes time to acquire. Totally here for that. I would move the Roach into that category and then I would put 2 Judges in your bag if that's what you're putting with. So
Yeah.
that way,
Okay, that
when you're
makes sense.
warming up on the putting green and whatever, your hand gets used to that Judge feel, and you're not like
Roger
Judge
that.
Roach, Judge Roach, Judge Roach. And then if you're in the middle of the round and the ether accepts one of your discs gladly with open arms, you're still putting with a Judge on the other side instead of having to adjust to the loft of a Roach versus your Judge in the middle of the round, which is a pretty substantial difference between the Judge and the Roach because one has a very sizable bead on it and the Roach is beadless. So that
Yes.
alone can mess with your hand.
Okay.
But I want to have Brad. Brad is I'm going to go ahead and own this, guys. Here we go. I love throwing putters and I think Brad also enjoys throwing putters.
Me too. I was so excited about this episode.
So we were very pumped for this episode, and there was lessons to learn that we'll talk about when we don't have Ben with us. We'll talk about this in the post of it all. But I had Brad go out and throw some throwing putters because Ben, I think there's a hole here, and I want to hear Brad's results, and then I want to kind of take Brad's results and I want to compare
Hmm.
them to what you're using this AVR for and see which of these discs Brad tried because I know that one of them's going to help you. I'll just be real. I don't know which of the three is going to help. So we got to kind of work through this, and that's what we're going to do.
Cool.
You guys down for that?
Yeah, let's do it.
Oh,
All right. So Brad, tell us the experiment. How'd it go?
All right, here's the weekly experiment that we do. I went out. I usually throw 2 discs. Robbie had me throw 3 this week, which I literally told him, Robbie, please give me like 7 to throw because I just love throwing putters. So I have Neutron Envy here that I threw. I have an Electron Pilot that I threw.
Okay.
And I also have a Cosmic Neutron Pilot that I threw. All right, so I was really excited to try out these discs. Like the Envy, I grabbed it and it immediately felt good. It's gummy. It's like exactly what I like. Feels kind of like it would fly like my zone. And then I guess looking at the flight numbers, probably very similar to a very straight kind of beat in zone that I have. So I was very excited because I don't like to throw my zones on backhand. So I was like, okay, well I could get behind this. Honestly, the pilots, they feel, obviously they're both pilots, they feel like pilots, right? But I knew kind of immediately the Cosmic Neutron, it just felt very slippery to me, and I'm like, I'm not going to like this. But the Electron Pilot was grippy. I'm like, okay, we'll see. I throw a Challenger OS, it's in Jawbreaker plastic, very similar grip to this Pilot. So I went out to the field. Number 1, it was a 20-mile-an-hour steady wind and pouring down the rain. So let's just take that for what it's worth.
Excellent experimental conditions here. This is great. Yeah, that's awesome.
At first I was like, come on, like this is the worst possible scenario. But I was like, well, I do tend to like to play in the snow and the rain, so let's give it a fair shot. I mean, let's spin this a little positive. And
I do love playing in the snow.
Yeah, so I mean, I was like, okay, this is maybe real. So let's just throw this. So backhand, throwing these both all backhand. Robbie had me throw them 2 different powers. So he had me throw all these putters on like 60% power, and I'm throwing these all fan grip, by the way. I throw my putters fan grip. And then I threw them about 90% of power. He wanted to encourage me to throw them reasonable and then actually put some heat on them to see what these putters do. So backhand at 60% power, they all flew fairly similar distance as far as that's concerned. I did note that the Envy did not want to stay in the air as long as the pilots, though, with that much power. A consistent theme that we're going to see with the Envy over all of the types of shots, I felt like I really had to crank the Envy to get it rotating to stay in the air, which, I mean, kind of makes sense, right? That's what these discs are built to do. As far as the pilots, the glide was awesome. I mean, the glide was noticeably different from the Envy, and they did carry about 210, 225 on the pilots, about 200 for me on the Envy as far as distance. The Envy felt great in the hand, but again, the stability, it still wanted to get to the left on me. The pilots, however, would stay pretty laser beam straight for me on that amount of power. 90% power, fan grip. Really, when on any of these angles, if I wanted to crank on these pilots, they really wanted to turn on me. Even on flat backhand, 90% power, they both wanted to turn out to the right. This is the point that I realized immediately that although both of these are pilots, they are flying completely different from one another. The Cosmic Neutron Pilot will handle a little bit more torque resistance, but for me is a little more slippery. So take that for what it's worth. But the Electron Pilot was definitely more understable. So when I hit it with a lot of power on flat or Anhyzer, it did want to turn on me to an uncomfortable level where I didn't feel like it was usable. Same thing with the Cosmic Neutron. It did level out at the end sometimes, but it was almost uncontrollable. The Envy, however, when I hit it with 90% power on flat, it did carry a little farther for me. And the thing I like about the Envy on any of these shots is it did stick and hold like I'm used to my zone doing. So I did appreciate that. And even with the wind, if I powered it up, it did give me a consistent fade at the end, which I did appreciate. Backhand Hyzer, these are really where I kind of, again, I went into this wanting to love the Envy. This is where I started to realize that I was falling in love with this Electron Pilot a little bit for a whole different shot. But it also made me start realizing, and I'll wrap this up at the end, that the Electron Pilot and then the Envy would fill 2 different slots in my bag. These actually, for my arm speed, are not going to be similar discs for me kind of at all. They're actually 3 different discs. So on Backhand Hyzer, the Electron Pilot, beautiful Hyzer flip on 60% power, beautiful Hyzer flip, pushed straight for me and sat down. Loved it. Envy, 60% power, I couldn't really get to flip. It didn't really want to stay in the air. It kind of did a pushing Hyzer for me and set down about 200 feet. I didn't gain like really any distance with a Hyzer shot for that at all. And then the Cosmic Neutron Pilot, I'll be honest, it just did not want to stay in my hand, and it just was not great to throw. I could get it to flip up a little bit with 60% power, but it was definitely more stable than the Electron for me. Now 90% power, I could get the Envy to flip. I really had to crank it. It would handle the torque of the 90% power on Hyzer, but it was a pushing fade at the end. It did still want to get back left after it flipped up, and I almost felt like it was an uncontrollable sort of thing. I didn't feel very comfortable getting up to that much power. It could have been the rain, so we'll take that into consideration. But I just felt, I'm like, man, if I give this like 1% more power, I'm going to grip lock the crap out of this thing. So that's how I kind of felt. The Electron Pilot, though, beautiful Hyzer flip and just this beautiful turn to the right. It gave me, I threw it like 250 feet every time. Like flip up,
nice,
beautiful turn every time. And then the Cosmic Neutron Pilot, I could get to flip at 90% power. It did actually handle the torque better. I did feel I had more control on this one shot with the Cosmic Neutron Pilot. So it would flip up and it would kind of push straight and then give me a little bit of fade at the end. Not a lot, but again, 3 very different shots from 3 discs, and then 2 of them are the same mold, right? Backhand Anhyzer, really both of the pilots, I had to be very sensitive on how much Anhyzer I gave them because they would turn and burn on me, both of them. Obviously, the Cosmic Neutron would handle a little bit better, but the Electron Pilot really wanted to dive on me. I didn't feel like I don't have to put that disc on Anhyzer to get it to turn for me. It wants to do it by itself naturally. When I gave it the Anhyzer, it definitely wanted to turn and burn. What I will say about the Envy is when I put it on an Anhyzer line, it would flex for me, which is nice. So I actually was like trying to compensate and aim at a basket I have in the yard, and I could put on a little bit of Anhyzer. It would turn a little bit for me, but fade back reliably every time and just sit down. So I definitely see the value of having that type of shot. Really the key takeaways here for me, just to wrap it up, is the Electron Pilot for me would be a great understable disc for me personally right now where I am. Kind of a shot I'm relying really on a Meteor to get me, which is a mid-range. And again, I feel like I have to I just can never really get the Meteor to really do what I want it to do, and this Electron Pilot was doing that. So it's almost replacing that type of shot I'm trying to get from a Meteor right now. The Envy, I don't like throwing my zones backhand, but this Envy was like the mirrored flight of my zone for backhand. So again, 2 different kind of, and then, I mean, forgive me Pilot fans here, but the Cosmic Neutron Pilot can just, not for me.
It's not in the bag.
Don't like it.
It's not in the bag.
Not in the bag. Not even. It's not even in the disc box near the bag. It's like not even coming off the shelf. Like, I'm not touching that disc. So happy to give it away to you all. The good news is, the one we recommend for Ben, we're giving to him, but we're having 2 discs to give away this week. So everyone benefits from that. So Robbie, I'll hand that back over to you. I know it was maybe a mixed review from me. It was definitely a challenge. I was really excited for this episode, but it was definitely more difficult than I thought it was going to be.
Yeah, and I wanna take a moment because we always bring guests on, and so Ben, you get to experience the genuineness of this. Brad and I do not like script this. We don't go through and I say, oh, here, I want you to throw actually 18 discs, and then the 2 that throw really well, that's what we're going to say I recommended to you. So when I'm recommending these discs and I'm trying to find options, it's not going to go well. And Brad, you had to navigate this week the oh man, I'm going to love an Envy, of course, because everybody loves an Envy. And there was some guy who threw a really good shot with an Envy. It was like, okay at best. It was like 250 feet or something.
I know. Yeah. I think I heard about that.
I don't know. Like, you might have heard of it, but I mean, you probably not. It's super low key. Anyways,
Yeah.
So the Envy is something that people get super hyped about, and we can walk into a disc with expectations and try to make it work over and over again. And just like we've talked about with all these other discs, oh yeah, it has to fit in my bag because why would I not? It's so good. I'm going to love it. And maybe it's just not the disc for you. And there are a ton of putters out there. So this category alone can create so much variance with that. So it's okay that the Envy was not for Brad. What I want to ask you, Ben, is when you have this AVR in your bag and you said you like to use it for approaches, you really liked, you were shocked when you threw it, how much distance you got out of it, right? Give me a
Yeah.
me a 20-second summary of how does this, like, what are you using this AVR for?
So this is really kind of a recent development because I just picked up the judges, I guess about a week and a half ago. So this is, again, this is still kind of recent. And like I said, just for kind of kicks, that part of the reason why I got it is because, just for kicks, one day I was throwing around in a field and I was like, wow, I really like that. And it sort of changed my mind on what I wanted to use the AVR for. And, maybe a day later, I saw that there was a sale on Amazon and they had 5 packs of judges for like $44. And I was like, well, that's great. And so then it starts, going in my head and I'm like, oh, you know what I could do? I could get like 2 5-packs and me and Gavin, that's my son, would have discs to practice putting with. And that was really kind of where my brain went with that. But I love the entropy for upshots. Okay. But I don't, there's a comfortable distance that I have with that entropy, if that makes sense. And past that distance, I don't feel as comfortable as I do the past few times when I've thrown an AVR. And it's just, the thing I love about the AVR, it doesn't feel like, or at least the way I throw it, it doesn't have a lot of fade.
Okay.
And so I don't feel like it's going to do this really sharp, like, I'm going to throw it going this way and it's going to end up like on the West Coast, and that's what's kind of valuable to me is that on short distance upshots, I'm always going to go to the entropy. That is the disc where I know exactly what that disc is going to do. It's the first disc I ever got that I actually was like, wow, I know what this disc is for. Like I know exactly what this disc is for. But there's definitely a distance limit on that. And so I feel like the AVR is kind of the disc that I use for the same purpose, but for longer distance shots, if that makes sense.
But like you said, the AVR isn't necessarily going to fade at the end. It's just going to kind of go straight.
Straight, yeah.
Perfect. So what I want to recommend between those 3 discs, so to recap the ones that Brad has, we have the Entropy, which is, or the Envy, not the Entropy. Tricky. We have the Envy, which is the most overstable option of the 3. We have the Electron Pilot, which for those of you who are not familiar with MVP, that's their base plastic. So we have a base plastic Pilot. And the thing about base plastic is the more you throw it, especially as a throwing putter, it's going to beat in really fast and become very reliable, very straight. And that's fine. But that disc, I think we can actually find once you start using some of your judges. If your judges get dinged up on a cage or something like that, and you're like, oh, I can't putt with this anymore, I think that's where you can look at throwing one of your judges if you end up getting more to replace, right? So we can lean into that, and one of your judges can fill a similar slot there. So then we have the Cosmic Neutron, which is a premium plastic Pilot, to fill that middle ground. But I actually think that your AVR is a beat-in version of what that Cosmic Neutron Pilot is going to be. So with that in mind, I think the disc that I really want you to try and for you to report back to us with is that Envy.
Okay.
Because you mentioned the Entropy has this like distance gap, right? Like it can only go so far.
Right. Yeah.
So I believe that your AVR is going to fly similar distance to this Envy. but it's pretty
Mm-hmm.
torque resistant as well. So you can hit it. I mean, like Brad said, it was the only one that he could throw on Anhyzer, and it was flexing on him, right? And that's in rain.
Okay.
So even today, Brad, I feel like you probably couldn't even put a great move on it.
No, not really.
So, and it still felt torque resistant. So like that just goes to show
Right.
you can really hammer on this thing because the Envy's fantastic and its gyro so it goes farther, which is always a nice plus, right?
Yeah.
So when I want you to try this Envy because if you're looking at the chart, we're going to throw the graphic up hopefully one more time for those of you watching. But if you go look, I'm going to send you a picture of your bag on the My Disc Bag app. There's this very large gap between your putters, your putting putters, and your entropy. And I think the Envy's going to live in the dead middle of that. It's not going to be so overstable as your entropy, but you're going to be able to really open up some tee shots. And what I want you to think of it as is not a difference of your AVR. I want you to think of it as a slower buzz.
Okay.
And
That makes sense. Okay,
when
I
you're
got you.
throwing that, I want you to think of it for how buzzes should be flying for you based on the distances we talked about today. I think that this is going to fly much more in that realm, whereas the entropy you would not classify anywhere near the buzz because it's just trying to get out of the sky. It's trying to fade for approaches, whatnot. The Envy should hopefully fly in that spot, and it could be wrong. I could recommend I could have Brad hype with the Envy, and then you could come back and report back to us and be like, no, the Envy's not for me either, and that's okay. So I want you to try the Envy out. How does that sound to you as a slower buzz?
Sounds great. Yeah, I'd love to try it
Awesome.
out.
Well, what we're going to do is we will tag up with you after all of this and get that info and get the Envy your way, which means that we got 2 pilots for the party people watching today. Cosmic Neutral. I mean, those things are beautiful. So I also, fun fact.
It does look good.
About the pilot. I always thought that the little mask on the Electron pilot, I thought he just had a really big nose. I never thought of it as a pilot's mask. Fun fact. Well, Ben, do you have any questions for us, man? I just want to say thanks for coming on. We appreciate it. I know today was a little longer.
Oh no, I have been a big fan, man. When I first started playing, I think I did what a lot of people do and get on YouTube and just start looking around. And your channel has been a big part of my growth as a player. So this is great, and this is a lot of fun for me. I'm glad I got to come on.
Absolutely, and that's our goal. Brad and I talk about it often. Our goal for this podcast is for those of you listening. There are lots of beginners, and then you're still in that category. We're still fresh, got those fresh baby legs, and it's okay. We want this to be a place where you can come listen and say, "Hey, I'm currently walking through the same thing." One thing that we didn't even really mention is that you're getting tournament discs. I think so often that happens to so many players. They get a disc for a tournament disc, and they're like, "Well, it has to go in my bag now because I paid for it." And it's like, maybe not yet. Maybe not yet. And I'm glad that the Thrashers worked out for you. I'm glad the Buzz is working out. But it's another fun wrinkle that adds to this game of building the bag that's constantly shifting. So, Ben, I want to say thanks for coming on, man. We really appreciate it. Brad, thank you for trying out those discs, and I'm sorry to disappoint you.
Oh, no, it's good. Hey, it disappointed me to impress Ben. Ben's going to love the Envy. I think it's going to fill that spot. So I'm happy to do the dirty work for you, Ben. It was great having you on. Thanks for being a guest.
Awesome. Yeah.
All right. We'll catch you next time. Another guest, another time, man.
Number 4.
I do love just throwing putters. Like it made me, the whole conversation just made me want to get out and play a putter only round.
Yep. I might do that. I've never done it. It might be on the list to do this weekend.
Oh man, if you have better weather, I would highly suggest it. Getting out and doing it.
Oh, it's actually going to be sunny for the first time in a week, so I'm going to do it.
Come on. But the real question is, are you going to count your zones as putters?
I go back and forth. I think I have to stand by what episode 1 or 2 where I said I don't count them as putters, so I'll stand there. I'll take the heat for that.
Okay, that's fine. I'm counting my picks as putters. I'm just going to go ahead and put that out there. There's still 3 speeds in my heart.
Okay.
So
yeah,
fantastic. Well, Brad, I want to make sure that we don't walk away from this moment of this episode, and once again reminding people. How are you feeling on the other side of, hey, this is the first set of discs that have been recommended that aren't competing for a spot in your bag?
I think I started off being a little negative and saying, "Oh, this is kind of a bummer." But I mean, the goal of this podcast is not for me to replace all of my disc with other discs, right? And also the positive, because I mean, I was drenched, right? My feet are soaked, everything's soaked. I'm throwing these putters in 20-mile-an-hour wind in the pouring down rain, and I'm just like, wow, this was just not a great experience. But once I got dry clothes on, got in the car, headed back, I was like, okay, let's look at this from a different lens, right? Good news here is I don't have to like every disc. No one has to like every disc, right? That's why other manufacturers exist. There's plenty of putters for me to try out. But what it did make me realize is what I don't like. And I think sometimes that's as important as knowing what you do like, right? Plenty of discs for everyone. And, just because these didn't go in my bag doesn't mean, Ben, he may love the NVI. I think we both agree he's going to throw that thing great. And then you in the comments that are listening, again, comment down below. Comment down below a disc that you tried that you wanted to love that you just did not fall in love with. And that we're going to give away 2 of these pilots to you all. And that's okay. Someone's going to enjoy these pilots the way that I wanted to. And that's okay. So I think lesson learned, and it's just, this is a process, Robbie. You know that better than anybody. And, this part of the process was not as great for me, but hey, that Uplink process was awesome. So, I mean, I think you get some wins and losses.
Absolutely. And that's the case for all of us, right? Yeah, for sure. Speaking of wins, we have lots of plastic that's out there and available. Tell us what's new in the Foundation warehouse.
Yeah, so by the time this podcast airs on Friday, we've got a huge Discraft shipment in. We've got swirly plastic, swirly ESP everywhere. So there's going to be some beautiful disc, and we're doing pictures of every disc of all the swirly plastic now, so you're going to see the exact discs that you're getting. So check that out. Just got a big shipment of mint discs in. So got some Bobcats, got some Jackalopes, and there's a lot of hype around those. They feel great. So Jackalope may be getting some field work this week from me. It kind of feels like almost like an era from Finish Line. Kind of has the same feel. The plastic's just great. So excited to throw those. So be looking out for that. All of our Foundation custom stamp stuff should be up this weekend as well. So we've got Firebird custom stamps. We've got P2 custom stamp. We have Evader custom stamps. We have, you name it, we have custom stamp Foundation discs. So check out those. Everything I listed, pilots, envies, everything we talk about in this podcast, go to foundationdisc.com. It can all be found there in the description. Also, if you want to be a guest in this podcast, I've linked the correct form in the comments below. There's some issues with the last one. I don't know why it was allowing everyone admin access and they could edit the form. I fixed that. It's good to go now. So please submit there if you want to be the guest. We'd love to have you on. Again, if you're brave enough to come on and let everyone see the things you're doing great and the things you're not doing so great, I think it helps everyone learn. So we'll be glad to have you on.
Yeah, that's the dream. So make sure you hit us up, and if you shoot us a message, we will be directing you back to that form. So you can just save yourself the effort and find that form right there, because truly we want to chat with you guys. We want to see a variety of skill level, and don't feel like just because you throw 200 feet, you're eliminated automatically. And don't feel like, I'm going to say because you throw 350 feet. We definitely want to have some guests on, Brad. I don't know about you, but maybe that do throw a little farther than you and still work on parts of their bag as well. We don't just want it to be like, oh yeah, if you're not Brad, don't you think about showing up on our podcast. No, everybody's got room. So we are excited to work with you and excited to chat, and just want to make one reminder: if it's good,
keep it in the bag. See y'all next week.